August 5th work session of the Williamsburg City Council will come to order. Ms. Bertram, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Maslin is absent. Ms. Ramsey?
Here.
Mayor Freiling?
Here.
Vice Mayor Pons? Here. Mr. Zhang?
Here.
Items for the City Council meeting of Thursday. Mr. Trivette, anything you'd like to?
There's just a couple things that I would note. Number one is that we will be finally approving the comprehensive agreement on the Monticello Avenue PPTA, so that project can get started. And then we're also going to be adding a new park to the system, City Square, which is actually just the plaza here in front of the Stryker Center and the community building green, officially naming it City Square and adding it to the park system.
Any questions, comments? If anybody from the public would like to comment on any of the items for Thursday's meeting, you're welcome to do so now. Mr. Glazner, if you want to, it's going to be a very short meeting, but you're welcome to come up now. It's fine.
I appeared before the work session a session or so ago with some comments I had about the water billing. Came back to the regular meeting and was told somebody be in touch with me. I haven't heard anything. Are you all continuing to contemplate or what?
We have had some conversations individually with the city manager. Mr. Trivette, could you reach out to Mr. Glazner
Absolutely,
next day
Mayor.
or two?
Yes,
perhaps?
I'm sorry, Mr. Glazer.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no one else come forward, we will move on to background presentations, discussion of which we have none. City Council communications, anything from the various liaison assignments anybody would like to report? Schedule of meetings, Mr. Trivette, anything you want to highlight coming up?
Well, we have National Night Out tomorrow night from 5:30 till 8, I believe, at High Street this year. It'll be the change of venue, so if you're planning on coming, make sure you're coming to High Street and not downtown. We have the school supply drive August 10th at Walgreens Richmond Road and August 11th at CVS in Richmond Road. The business roundtable is at the community building on August the 13th. And Cone with a Cop on August the 17th at Baskin Robbins from 1 to 3 p.m.
Okay, takes us to new business. We have one item on the agenda today. Consideration and adoption of Ordinance 19-15 establishing an electronic participation policy for City Council and the appointed boards, commissions, and committees thereof. Mr. Trivette?
Yes. From time to time, members of the City Council or members of the boards and commissions that are appointed by the City Council are absent, sometimes of no fault of their own due to medical issues or other requirements to take them out of the country even. And we have on those occasions received requests for individuals to participate remotely, electronically, if you will. The state statute provides a vehicle that allows that to happen, but you first have to have an ordinance adopting a process by which to approve those requests, which is what's before you today. So as we move through the rest of the fiscal year, we thought that it would be convenient for the City Council to have this policy and also put it into place as an option for the boards and commissioners thereof.
And if I may just ask a question or two, and there's a limit on the number of times a member can avail themselves of this remote participation?
That's right. The ordinance that we have, for the most part, follows state statute to the letter, and one of those provisions is that you can only participate twice per calendar year in this way. And so for City Council, that's a little bit confusing because you have 2 meetings a month. You have the work session today and then the regular business meeting on Thursday. It would be 2 meetings of City Council, period. So you couldn't say, well, I only missed 1 meeting of work session and 1 meeting of the business meeting, therefore I've got 2 of each left to miss. That's not how it works. It's
And
2
it would likewise
periods.
apply to retreats or any ad hoc
That's right.
meetings?
Any meeting, any convened meeting of the City Council would count. So if you elected to call into one, that would be one of the allowed 2 absences.
And this is a multi-step process where we would first have to approve the ordinance, and then we would have to approve the request at the beginning of each meeting?
Right. Pursuant to the provisions of the statute, after the ordinance is adopted, when a member wants to participate remotely, they have to submit that request, and that request has to be approved by a majority vote of the body. So that wouldn't just apply to the City Council, it would apply to anybody who's using it.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, so describe to me how that would work here today.
If we allow somebody to phone in remotely, we would have to put a phone up here on the dais?
Well, luckily, in this room and in the city council's workroom, we have the ability to bring them in through the telephone system, and they would appear through the speakers. The downside is that it is wholly reliant on using the microphones, as we have tested it. And if you're just in the room, even in close proximity to the microphone, but the mic's not on or you're not close enough to it, the person on the phone can't hear you at all.
Is there an opportunity for communication or video communication?
That's a good question.
Like
It's electronic
face-
participation, so it requires the voice to be able to be heard. It doesn't say anything about the face or someone's surroundings to be seen or heard.
Could it
It
include?
doesn't prohibit it.
Okay.
I think the policy, I think there might be that concern, particularly for the board levels. What happens if folks start using those two times? I think the policy before us today stipulates a pretty reasonable regulation of having to state why you're not being able to be present at the meeting. It's recorded all in the minutes for anyone to consider, but in terms from a boards and commission standpoint, we received that end of the year report about absences and who showed up and who hasn't, and basically detailing what has happened at that board and commission meeting. And I think that's pretty reasonable given this. We might, if we were to consider someone for reappointment, that could be taken into perspective. I will say I see the clear benefits of this, one being that it might be applied this week for one of our colleagues, but also I can also see this being one of those ways to play partisan, in terms of not allowing or barring a member for whatever reason if you just had a simple majority. But I'm confident that in terms of Williamsburg, our culture does not reflect that way, and I hope our governance never gets to that point where it gets so petty that we want to allow a member of council to participate for whatever reason, just because there's a majority not allowing that member of council to participate. So I'm in favor of this, but with that understanding, hopefully in the future, our future councils will respect that. So.
And so I support it as well, but I'll tell you, I was a little hesitant. I mean, obviously, it's common practice in other municipalities to allow for this type of participation in meetings. I think if you sign up for the job, then you need to try to show up. And I realize you can't always do that. And so to Councilman Zhang's point, only allowing it to kind of takes away the abuse of it. And I'm not so much concerned about council so much, but I can see as you get down into some of the other boards and commissions, not that those people aren't equally as attentive or willing to serve, but you may decide to step away and not be there, and those reasons may not kind of fit in the mold, but you have to fill out the application. But I think might as well step up to modern times and allow for it to happen.
Well, I'm in support of it too for basically the same reasons. And I think one thing that Vice Mayor Pons mentioned was an application. And so there are procedures that have to go through even before the body votes on it. And in that application, I understand there has to be the reason given. And so it's not something that's just fly by night type of, well, I don't feel like getting in the car and going to the meeting. So I agree with that. And also, as it is now, we do have members of boards and commissions that can't always make a meeting. And so this might allow them to participate by phone, where in the past, if they can't make a meeting, they just aren't there. And I think one thing that you mentioned too is that it has to be done or the board and commission would have to meet in a room where there is the technology available, which would be the council chambers as well as the workroom. And so anyone who wants to adopt this policy would have to hold their meetings in one of these two rooms.
Right, or in a room that we would have that capability.
So,
And on the application, when they state the reason, I mean, there's no standard. And it's up to the body that has to vote whether or not to accept.
It's on motion, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that body would then determine if that is a reasonable reason not to participate.
But one would assume that they would be telling you the correct reason, that it falls into either the medical exception or the emergency or some other travel situation where they can't make it here. I think the last time we considered this, we used the example of someone is on their way to the meeting and they have car problems and they can't get to the meeting, and so they contact the mayor. I mean, it can be at any point prior to the meeting.
Simply having to wash your hair or something.
And because it's only.
Might make an exception.
Well, and because it's for such a limited number of times per year, that's also an incentive to prevent abuse of the system.
And so I agree that the limitation of 2 opportunities per year, the requirement of the body to vote at that meeting for each time that anybody wants to participate remotely or electronically, seem like sufficient limiting factors. On top of that, it also seems like it would be a much greater pain to try to do this electronically and remotely than it would be just to come to the meeting. So, because it's got to be a little bit awkward to be on the other end. So I'm happy to support this.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I move that City Council adopt ordinance number 19-15 as drafted.
-16, I think.
Sorry, my
Second to 16.
16?
Yeah.
It says 15.
It's 16.
15.
Well, we've got it 2 different ways.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the sample motion says 15. So I'll amend it to 16.
Second.
If that's Ms. Ramsey.
Ms. Burcham?
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Freiling?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zhang?
Aye.
That concludes our business for today and brings us to open forum. If anybody would like to address council on any matter, we would ask you to come forward, state your name and address. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one, do we have any items for closed session?
No, sir.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Burcham?
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Freiling?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Zhang?
Aye.
We are adjourned. We will